Hello everyone, just before you get really bored, I want to get a photograph to see how many are here now and how many are here afterwards, because it is compliance and you will either fall asleep or walk out, so it's fine. Thank you.
Ja, we kennen het probleem, ja.
Grab the door first.
We rijden achter Daniel. Eén rijtje naar achter, is het probleem opgelost.
Yeah, it's a horrible seat to sit in.
Yeah.
Do you want to move seats?
Well, I don't want to move.
I was like, finally, sun, but it's a bit of a...
Yeah, now it's in there.
But it's a great angle.
Je hebt het. Je zit wel aan het plassen.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Oh, good, excellent. Thank you very much for coming along. More people than I actually expected. Compliance is one of those things that you love or you don't. I'm one of those, I'm not too sure camps. Who here works with Ansible already? Just so I can get brilliant. And how many of you work in industry that uses compliance or have to be compliant to work? I'll say no more. So we're talking well over 50%. So I'm going to try and go through and try and show you what we've been doing and how we're doing as one of the new features I've literally showed the last couple of days. So probably recognise a few of these. That might be some of you in the middle there at the end of the demonstration. But yeah, you can see this, obviously DORA is coming through for everyone in Europe right now. It can be applied with DORA as well, so there's a lot of things you can start taking into account. What I'm going to try and do today is to go through a project called Ansible-Lockdown. And I'll try and show you a bit more about it. First of all, I'm Mark Bolwell. I am one of the principal architects on the Ansible-Lockdown project. I've been an admin and an automation expert. Some people say I'm lazy because I just want to automate everything, but I've been working on those things for like 20-25 years now. I work alongside MindPoint Group, who is a cybersecurity specialist over in America, and they sponsor and support the Ansible-Lockdown project. I've been writing Ansible since probably a year after it came out, 2014, something like that. I've been at Ansible Fests, I've done meetups and bits and pieces as well. So I've got a little bit of experience, but as I find talking to everyone here, I can always learn more as well. So there's always another way of doing things. Okay, so let's just go through a little bit of why we've got to do this compliance. Who's written their own compliance? Anyone tried to write their own compliance? Yeah? Anyone really hate it? Okay. Is that the next screen you see? Because it works on server 1, it doesn't work on server 2. Yeah. And then, because the boss thinks it's a great idea, you're going to get it done next week, because there's automation that's really fast. And we know for a fact that it doesn't happen overnight unless you've got the perfect environment. And the biggest thing people forget is that compliance is always changing. There's always a new standard coming out. You have to keep on top of it. If you don't keep on top of it, then you're going to be behind it, and it's even harder to get on top of it. One of the biggest things that people don't take into account when you build a new server, or those of us on the front line that are trying to fix things and write things understand this a lot more than others. But when you get a server, you don't just install the operating system. You've got a life cycle of the server. A lot of that is about maintaining that server. Whether it be patches, is it still compliant after patches? Does it change anything? So you're patching, you're testing, you're recycling, you're patching, compliance. All these things go through the whole life cycle, so it's a constant work for you to do. I am going to rattle through this a little bit fast, because I want to try and do the demo for you. Now, what we're trying to do is making compliance bearable, and we have a product called Ansible-Lockdown. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it. It's open source, so completely the same way. And we've got a few people here from the community that work on the to me, and I have some really good pulls, so I can tell you now that there's some PRs from people in this room right now that have really helped it grow. We're a community of 700 people right now on Discord, and it's growing exponentially quite a lot every day. It is written for people to pick up and use. So we try to write it not to be specific to my environment or your environment or your environment. We try and make it so you can use it in most environments out of the box, just with a few little tweaks. And that's one of the nice things about Ansible and how you use configuration management, is the ability to turn things on and off. One of the big things that you'll come across, for those that haven't really played with it, in one of the main ones called CIS, is to remove the web server. that's installed on your system. Well, if it's a web server and delivering your website, you probably don't want to remove your web server. So having the ability to turn those things on and off is really, really key. And it's great if you've got your own environment, because you just set it to no all the time, but when you're trying to write for a community and you're trying to write for everyone to use, it's a much bigger thought process. You're trying to make it so you can hit 90% of people if you can, out of the box. It's a really difficult thing to do. And that doesn't happen without people helping us like you, and writing it in such a way that you can change it very, very fast. So I'm going to say now, I'm using roles all wrong. That's what Tim Apple's going to be doing the chat on right now. It's still in roles. And the reason being, if anyone's seen the website, we have about 100 repos we manage right now, across different operating systems, different versions, different releases. So trying to work out whether people want to go Red Hat, Debian, SUSE, wherever they want to go, if they want CIS or STiG, how do we write the collection? So we've just got to try and get some feedback now from the community coming up and how do we go forward. As part of lockdown and config management, we actually use a product called goss. Now, goss was originally part of Molecule a little while ago, doing some testing. Who's used goss before? 1, 2? Okay, so goss is very, very fast. It runs on the host, it's phenomenally quick. And those of you that get frustrated with compliance and automation will realise, try and get an answer back on what's failed really quickly, instead of pressing the big names. I'm trying not to name any, but there's a lot of good scammers out there. They can take 20, 25, 30 minutes to get a response. Here, on some boxes, even today, you'll see it'll be sub 2 minutes. And it's not just testing for the configuration being correct. The goss version I've written tries to keep it so you can see what the running configuration is. So in a lot of scans you'll find that you'll pass the configuration, but the run configuration is completely different. So it's one of those things we've got to try and bear in mind. We're heavily using Ansible Galaxy. We're now over 500,000 downloads across the repos. And we are very, very heavy on GitHub as well. It is obviously all run Ansible. We use Ansible across the board, so Ansible drives the whole configuration. And when I say the whole configuration, Ansible drives goss, and the configuration goss then uses to audit. So if you've turned off don't uninstall the web server, it will not run the web server check, because otherwise you're going to get a failure because it's still installed. You only want to check what you're looking for. We do use best practices, so we are currently not using Molecule, but we use Lint very, very heavily. We're using a product called Pre-Commit, so the plugin that everyone uses Pre-Commit before you commit, and the GitHub repo can look at it as well. We've got all those things inside as well to try and make it as consistent as possible for when we're delivering to you guys. Okay, 2 major groups here. One CIS, which is mainly European, so most of you have heard of CIS. Anyone heard of STiG? Any, apart from... Okay, so STiG is based on DISA, it's part of the DoD. And it's very heavily centred towards the federal government in America. So they are very similar to CIS, but they have another layer. Now, the DoD and DISA STiGs are actually written with the partners. So in this case, Red Hat helped them to write the hardening. The CIS is community-based. So the community helps to write it feedback and provide the next best practices. So they are very, very similar, and if there isn't one for the other, you can alternate in the federal government. But CIS is the majority of what we're seeing downloaded, even in America right now. So it's very, very busy. Current supported OSs, these are just a couple. And you'll see SUSE is not on there, it's literally being written right now, as well as an up-and-coming operating system which is not quite GA yet, but I'm just leaving that there. We also don't only support operating systems. We also have some Cisco network components we can run. We have Apache, Nginx currently works as well, Kubernetes, and I'm halfway through doing the AAP platform on STiG as well. So it's not, because it's Ansible, when it's not tied to one specific platform, we can run it on multiple things. Okay, so how does it all work? Now, like I said, Ansible is the source under control. So everything inside our Ansible role is the source of how goss runs, how you configure it, how you set it up. The same settings you use Ansible in your variables are the same settings that goss runs. First of all, we try and get you a pre-change state, so you can see what state your box is in before you did anything. This is then stored locally on your machine, So you have a copy on your machine, what state it was before you made any changes. Now we all know that we want to have downtime beforehand and reboot it and make sure it's working properly before we do it. I know it doesn't happen, we have clients that don't do it either. We then try and remediate according to your settings, and then we'll do a post remediation so you can see a before and after state. We also try and show you what's happened, what's changed, using Ansible a lot. And then if any controls need you to go back and validate or manually look at, we've then got a list at the bottom that will tell you what to do. Okay. I didn't know I had another Ansible window there. Okay, so here is the demo environment. I am hoping they're with me today. I'm going to go for a live demo. I haven't recorded this one yet. I have two systems. I don't know if anyone's noticed there, but this is now ARM. Now, officially, CIS or STiG do not support ARM. So what we've tried to do with the help of the community, I was actually chatting to the gentleman that helped me do the PR last week in Quebec. He's written it so the way that Ansible works, it goes off to your system, it discovers what system calls you can make into the kernel, and then uses Ginger 2 templating to make sure we do the correct audit deconfigurations. So it's actually a dynamic way of working. I'll actually show you a bit of code in a second. Put that in there. It's very clever what they've done. I'm very impressed. And this again is the power of, as John's been saying, and everyone else, the community really does help you grow and learn yourself as well. So if you see the very first line here, we have the line 7 is post-audit D set supported syscall variable. So it's just one, oh, you're not even seeing the screen, are you? That's not good. I'm not seeing the screen. Let me see. That's your fault, John. Let me see it now. That's because PowerPoint decided to take over the screen. Sold. I've lost power. I've lost it now. I've now lost Visual Studio Code completely. I am one of those using Visual Studio Code, as you noticed earlier on. It's one of the most popular ones out there, and I do use the Ansible plugin. I can't see what's happened to it. Where's it gone? Oh, please hold. Can anyone? Can you see it? It's just fallen off the bottom of that screen now. I can't see it. Sorry, we've got part of the screen that's not appearing on there. So I'm trying to work out. I think.
You can check it here, but yeah. You see a box there, but that's what it is. Just turn off mirror mode. Turn on mirror
I'm going to
mode.
have to. Let's just unplug that 2 seconds. That's come back. Okay.
Yeah, there's.
Here we go, here we go. I'll try and bring it over for you. Okay, so the very top line, you'll see, is just doing a local audit system call. Okay, and what it's trying to do is discover what system calls it's able to make on the system, gathers that into a list, and then with the use of the Ansible action, can't see my screen.
Can you make the font bigger?
I could, but I can't see my own screen. I get one word per line. I can try, hang on. Is that better?
Yep.
Right, now bear in mind I've got to come across here with the mouse. It's far too fast. And then if we look under audit D, you'll see that I'm running, if I can manage to. So here you can see we're looking at the exec VE call. And what it's doing is double checking if that system call exists on the list, and then it will add it into a Ginger 2 template. So when it copies across to the host machine running goss, running the Ansible, it will only put the correct system calls for your audit deconfiguration. Meaning when audit D will actually start and not have a misconfiguration inside it, it's not the best at telling you it's not working very well. So it's quite complex when you start to go through it. There's quite a lot of Ginger 2 in there. It has extended that. And the fact that you've now got 2 different operating systems that aren't officially supported, we're trying to assist people with, and the community have fed this back again. I can't go hard enough on it and just say how good it is. So that's what I was doing. I will actually just quickly. And this is the problem. I don't know if you can see my screen, but this is far too big for me to run now. Okay, so I'm going to run the playbook really quickly in the background, and then I'll show you what's going on with the. No, I won't, because I'm not in the right direction. It's the wrong folder. Oh, really handy. With the wrong terminal window.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a better start. There we go. So that's just going to go off. They're running locally on UTM on the bottom here. So they are running on my laptop. What I will do is I'll bring this back to the screen. I'm hoping display on there. It's not. Okay, so you can see the inventory here. Using it on and off, as I was saying earlier on, the ability to turn things on and off as the way you want them, and the ability to build the way you want them, means that I've got two systems that are set up very differently. So one of them here, I'm actually using the order component locally, so it's copying from what could be a local drive on O1, and IT, it's actually downloading it from Git. So we're trying to make it as uniform, you can be usable as possible. The whole reason why we've chosen to go down the goss road is because it's great for air-gapped environments. Anyone work in air-gapped environments? Yeah. So trying to get anything certified, signed off to get inside an air-gapped environment is really hard. Having a single Go binary, fully open source where they can see, you only have to sign off for one binary and get that approved. You don't have any other language, which I can't say about, bringing hundreds of modules in, which then have to be checked and validated. So the reason we chose goss is that we work heavily with the federal government over in MindPoint. Okay, so you see here, I also passed a few other variables to it, and I've left the passwords on screen because it's not exactly obvious. It's just favorite boxes I've just started up, just to play around with things. That's not best practice, please don't do it. You can set up order, you can turn order off, you can turn it on, you can do all sorts of things with it. You've got also other variables you can set to your own environments. And as with Ansible, it's really easy with anything to variabilize and use variable inheritance. So do you know how the inheritance works? Everyone know that default's the lowest level and you can re-override them very, very quickly. So everything we set, apart from those that very rarely change, is going to be default vars. And there should be some sort of documentation around that. The other ones we don't tend to use very often are going to be in the host vars area. So just vars. But everything else you can override quite easily with inheritance. So let's go through. So on the demo already, I'll go back to that screen there. Why are we rattling through this? Anyone any questions so far? We're all very quiet. Go on.
You had a list of operating systems there.
Yeah.
How easy would it be to take, say, the Debian template
Yep.
and adapt it for Debian derivatives? So we use Dev1,
Yep.
which doesn't have systemd, which causes a lot of problems with the compliance stuff because it assumes systemd. So it would be nice to adapt it for that.
So I would say you can test it. It's also going down to the modules. So we try very, very hard not to use the shell or the command modules. We try to use modules that are built in Ansible as much as possible. We do use community modules because obviously they're there for a reason. So there is some dependencies from the collections point of view. But we do, whilst officially, if you look at the CIS, it will say CIS will be Red Hat 9 or whatever it's going to be. We do test it on Rocky, Alma, Oracle, so we know they work. But then you've got the systemd problem is how the Python module from Ansible actually handles that. Is it trying to run a service? But it should find it if services install the old init processes. It should be fine, but I wouldn't say I've tested that.
We can always alias that with a bash script.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this should work. We've got people that use them in different places. I did have someone say, does your Debian 10 work on Debian 9 the other day? Not quite so sure that's going to work, but we'll see how we get on. Where are we going? So we should. Is that finished already? Wow, I didn't expect that to happen quite so fast. That was faster than I expected.
Well, that's good.
That is good. Problem is you can't see the screen still.
It's 3-1.
I'll find the mouse now. There we go. Right, so I'm hoping if I move that over, we'll get an idea. So here was the end result of the controls running. You can see right at the bottom we've got the normal Ansible summary, which is the number of things that are ran, the number of things that have changed. Where possible, and I will always state where possible, it's as idempotent as we can possibly make it. I also feel that sometimes if I'm adding a file to a system, I'm making a change to a system, so that should be changed rather than it's just a file that I'm going to use, but it's still a change to a system. So I try and think about how some admins might think. if we go back at the screen, well, I can go back this way. Oh no, can take that one now. It is running a fair few checks. So on the Red Hat 9, you will see the number of, this is the audit summary. Okay, so at the bottom here, you're going to find different results. One, because one's run it one way, and one's run it a different way. So you've got one using auth select, and one's not using auth select, or config. I can't remember its name. So they're set up slightly differently. But you can see in 28 seconds, run 806 checks in your box feed. So if you're running locally, you can hop on a box and run goss manually. You can also run, there's an option to run audit only through the playbook, and again we use a whole Ansible config to drive the next level of configuration management, to make sure the configuration works, and then give you the results back. Any questions on that so far? Now, no one's asked what goss is. Goss is a YAML-driven product, and the reason why we've chosen that because you're using YAML every day in Ansible, and you're using YAML every day in goss. So you'll see similarities straight away. In the folder structure, if I can, sorry, this is so big, I'm struggling to find anything on here. Hang on that one. Here we go. In this directory, which is, so here's my audit files. So these run, and you'll see a similar structure the way we run audits. I've got no symbols. You want to see some of the symbols off from here? Quite easily. Let's look at that again, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I've lost track of where I'm going.
It's there, but it's. You want to see the content of the file?
Yeah.
You see line 1 just underneath rel 9. The bottom thing is just moved that way, so you can resize it down, and then you have your file.
That one there.
A little up, one more bar up.
I can't even see
Up,
it.
up, up.
This angle, you
Up,
can't see.
Up.
That one.
There, yeah.
We're there.
2 pixels up, you were there. There, click it, scroll down. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Hey!
I've got my own. Thank you very much. See, this is about the community and everyone getting involved. That's what I like to see. So you can see here, although the language is slightly different, it's all a YAML language. So here again, I've set all my variables in my default var for Ansible. These are passing across to say whether variables turn on or off. So you're using exactly the same. Again, this one here, auto-refresh. If you don't want to have auto-refresh, it will skip the control. Only testing what you want. And again, because we're all using version control, when it comes back to documenting your processes that you've got exceptions for, because I know you all do that really well in compliance, you then have your version control that have that written down as well. So you're driving configuration management through version control, and you have full visibility to any auditor, compliance person who wants to sit down next to you and trying to give you the 9th degree of what you're doing. So hoping that's a little bit simpler. You'll find as you go down and pack the file, it uses modules. They're actually called tests in goss. We also pass it a lot of extra metadata. So you'll find the output of this can come in 2 different formats. One is JSON, which is the default we set up in Ansible to run it with. And the second one is documents. And documents are a lot more human readable, documentation, sorry. But the JSON format allows us to manipulate data and show it to you in a different format, which I might just give you a little hint in a second of how it's doing. Any questions where we are?
I remark, this is so much better than OpenSCAP-XML.
I know. The problem is that you're trying to read it, and if you've got a similar thing you're reading all the time, it makes life much easier.
But this is not generated by Ansible.
It's not generated by Ansible. Not generated by Ansible at all. So these files that I created is driven by Ansible. So we go back to, if I can find that.
Variable bit,
Yeah.
Where am I going?
Scroll up, go right.
I'll tell you what, this is driving me. What's it?
Yeah.
Lost my screen. No. No, that's too big. Not having it on my screen is really.
You want to go to line 1 or?
No, I want to go to the templates in my.
Oh, templates, okay.
So, into.
How long is your microphone cable? Could you stand in front of the desk?
Sorry.
How long is your microphone cable, and could you stand on this side of the desk? so you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can try and turn it on randomly. That would work.
Yeah, no, you
Oh, look at this.
No, you've
Hands-free.
broken it.
I've lost it now.
No, it's back.
Can we see? No.
It fixed itself. Don't touch the cable.
Oh, it's the gas. The gas is on. Sorry, everyone. Okay.
That's better.
Right. So if we go
At least you can see
into
what you're doing.
There's finally a lot of where the console is.
Before I use the
Brings up. And then line
Open
control
free
is
command.
not
Yeah, I
working.
should click on the editors.
At
Oh,
the
yeah,
end, it's
the-
open editors.
in the
You have
bottom
to
bar.
thank-
There's debug control.
What is that
ports,
doing
open
down there?
editors.
Oh wow.
Where'd it go now? Oh, left.
That's because I'm trying to use a keyboard using the scroll pad, and I have sausages for fingers. It doesn't really help me.
Because it's not Win or Emacs. That's only
If we go into the goss template, we'll see exactly how we're driving up all the goss. So here is your goss template, and this is purely Ginger 2. So as we go through it, all of these variables are driven from Ansible itself. Everything's driven from the default files. You'll see all the inheritance, how we use on screen. We're driving them through each section. So you can turn the sections on and off. They're all inherited from how you're running.
And the turning off, I could compare that to the tailoring file of an OpenSCAP. Disabling rules.
Yes, near enough.
You repeat the question.
So you can turn, so when you turn them on and off, you can compare them to other scanners.
Yeah.
So OpenSCAP, who uses OpenSCAP? 2 of you, 3 of you,
That's
maybe 4.
That's a good thing. Little as possible.
Little as possible.
Yeah, who uses Nessus or Rapid7 or any of those, any of the above? Do you find you also get false positives? I'm saying no more, there's a really good blog on that. But you can see where I'm coming from, hopefully, on how compliance works. And the nice thing with Ansible, and I was a sysadmin for many years, and I really wanted to just get into automation and configuration management really, really quickly, because I could just see a massive win for me as a team and as a team leader eventually. And the nice thing was that all the clients I worked with at MSP were brownfield, so nothing was new. And to work with Ansible and have that ability to turn things on and off very quickly and tweak them was a really, really quick and easy way of doing things.
How do you turn it off? You just hold
So
it
you
down.
literally, if I can work out how I'm going back through this screen again, please hold. You can override using normal variable ways, so if you use extra vars or your @ symbols or group vars or however you want to run it, but everything in general is set in, just going to click on it, that's not going to, in your default main. So you'll find all your files, everything is Boolean. So we try and, well, everything, because obviously some things you can set yourself, like your users and your passwords. Again, do not put passwords inside here because it's going onto GitHub. But you'll find you can set up which directories you want to go to, how you want to set them up for your environment. So anything we feel that you can turn on and off, you might want to, it's about making it as usable for many people as possible. And that's the whole idea. Now, there's a couple of people in here that I know have done some really good PRs and come back to some really good work. I can't say enough, as long as John couldn't say enough on the community aspect. When you've got a team of 3 or 4 running this, compared to 600-700 that just need to give you that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds of feedback sometimes, just to fix something that you may not have seen or you have done 5 years ago, it really helps to give you that little hint. Any more questions on these? Yes?
How are the sections defined?
So in CIS, there's 7 sections now. Those of you that are still in the old versions, there's 6, but the new version there's 7. They've just rewritten the whole thing, just to make life easy. So you'll find section 1's namely file systems and mounts. 2 is services. Oh, you're going to try and put them on the spot now. I can't remember the rest of them.
No,
But they're all broken down into different
So
areas. basically.
confusing,
Yeah, my
and
question
the
was
numbers
because
don't match with 7, 8, and 9.
No, and you'll also find that if you had 1.1.1 in Debian, it would be a different 1.1 in Red Hat. So for us to try and write that consistently so everyone can go, I just want to turn off 1.1.1 everywhere, it's great. But you've got 10 different operating systems, it doesn't always work that way.
imagine doing that while upgrading from version 1 to version 2 and then rewriting all.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's fun. Any more questions?
Yeah, the output format of goss, what is it? Is it something where I can easily get key value pairs?
Okay, so we've written it to come out in JSON. So you can override that. So the default value is JSON. It's all documented reader docs, so Ansible-Lockdown is all reader docs as well. But you can change to a human readable format with documentation. And that's all settable in variables and overwritten in variables if you want to. I will be cheeky, I'll show you the next slide. Right, this is, so you've just seen the first thing. So this ARM one's literally being pulled Friday and committed in. So ARM is now being officially supported by us as well, as we go through repos and adding them. But the next slide, if I can find one now.
But does that mean all operating systems on ARM?
They will be on ARM eventually. Obviously, we've got a whole cycle to go through and change.
Yeah, okay. So
There's
you
a lot of
they'll be
them,
on
6 to
ARM,
7
right,
sessions.
on ARM.
We'll be doing all of them on ARM eventually, yeah. But with the number of repos, you've got to change. So CIS comes out about every year, 18 months for the community. The DoD is every 3 months for every single operating system. So we do updates on that every 3 months. So yeah, it's quite hard. 9 times out of 10 is just changing the number, but you have to do all the commits and all the changes. So let's see if we can get this back up, shall we?
Yeah, the numbers are not consistent. They change the multiple versions.
Yep.
But maybe somebody should go over there and kick that.
Okay, so for those of you who just asked a question, and I haven't shown you this because you can see a big word that starts with B in it that I'm not allowed to really show you.
All pictures.
Yeah, so the top left-hand corner will give you an overview of your estate, and that is all just JSON. So we're using JSON to manipulate it and show you in a format. But you can actually drill down and find information, which one failed, why it failed, which host it failed. But again, all of this, guess what it's driven by? So everything we try and write is consistent across the board. We try and keep as much as possible. This is just a really small subset of what we have, but I haven't really shown you that, so I'll take that off the screen. Okay, there were 2 reasons earlier on I mentioned why we're using different products, and I'm going to go back to goss really quickly. Number 1, who doesn't make mistakes? That's pretty good. So you all admit that you make mistakes. So who writes Ansible? Do humans write Ansible? Do you think they make mistakes as well?
Yeah.
So from our own point of view, it's nice to say that the Ansible I've asked it to do has done what I've asked it to do. It's left the state in which I wanted it to do. But I want to double check what I've written and what the Ansible people have written and everyone else has written is correct. So I've used another tool to do that as well. So that's the reason. The air-gapped environments which you get, trying to get something signed across an air-gapped environment and all the dependencies is extremely hard in some environments we work with. So using a single binary, I can't talk enough about it. And it's faster. You saw that was less than 30 seconds on those boxes running on an ARM processor himself here. So that's the reason for it, and it's driven by Ansible. It's simple, and you've got consistency in what you're doing. I haven't written another language, it hasn't got its own language, it's just another different YAML format. Run out there. Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
I have a side question.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you integrate like the role into existing project? So, like, do people like everyone use some modules? Like, so the problem is like, how often when you update the role, like the lockdown
Yep.
in your project, like, what's your strategy there?
So lockdowns are still roles. So the question is, how do I implement the roles in the lockdown project? So there are still roles. We haven't got a collection. So you literally download a role, and how you include your roles will be how you set up your environment. So many people actually do a kickstart time or build time, depending on operating system. So they run Ansible as part of their Packer builds or however they're building them, and they run the Ansible inside that platform as well. It depends exactly. Again, everyone does things differently. So
would you consider like a good practice to actually keep on like updating the role kind of blindly, or like you do some testing for the new roles version?
So from our point of view, from the Ansible-Lockdown, they are all released. We have 2 branches we work on a lot. So we have the main release, which we would consider production, and is a lot more stable. The Vel will always work, but it has the latest and greatest fixes, which might knock out 50% of people that aren't going to work the same, because until we get the feedback sometimes, you don't know how that's going to work. But again, it's down to the feedback you get and PRs and issues and stuff being raised. But in general, unless I've written it or one of us guys on the team has written, do not do an upgrade, you should be able to move from one to the other. The only problem you're going to have is that they move numbering around. and that's completely out of our control. So where you might have said false to 1.1.1 before, that has now changed to be a completely different control, and you're now turning off web services. So you still need to have an understanding of what's going on. Same as running anything, you have to have an understanding of the operating system. I've had quite a few instances here recently, not here, but on the forums, on the chats recently. I've downloaded it and it's broken my box. You just download something from the internet, you really do need to test to make sure that you're in a good state. I think all of us have learned the bad way sometimes, but yeah, we do that. Other questions?
Can you print out a pretty summary that we can physically print and hand to management?
There's a guy called JP Menz, I believe, Ansible. When I first started it, he wrote a story saying Ansible is a configuration item that even a manager can read. Unfortunately, goss doesn't give you that same format. But Jason has a lot of metadata inside it, which we use for other purposes as well. The quick way is no, but if you use documentation and a little bit of SEB, which you might find on the read to docs, there's a way of just saying, here's one that failed with the title, so you can get it together really quickly. And obviously, if you want to put colours around it, it's just a little bit of code. It's not difficult. That answer the question? Excellent. Any more?
Yeah, so I'm curious because in Germany we have this problem. There's a government regulation called BSIC5, and what they want us to do is to prove that not only we're compliant now, but to prove that we've been compliant at every point in time in the past. And where have we not been compliant, and for how long? Is this something you were already looking at with that fancy web UI you kind of shown us to show that, okay, maybe we run checks daily and we can show in a little red on the timeline that, oh, maybe this time we weren't compliant? Or is that something that's not a topic with the regulations that you had to deal with?
Yeah, let me just see if we can find out how this terminal works again. I'll get my laptop back. Right, I'll show you really quickly. So, from... Why can't I find my terminal? Get that. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to do all this, I'm sure. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to get my screen back.
Maybe close the timeline, close the other ones.
Yeah. Close it.
But also every second.
I don't want to see that.
Maybe pop out the terminal.
So, for
There we
example,
go.
I have to comply with BSIC5.
Ah, there we
Okay.
go. Yeah.
All banks require
So,
BSIC5.
it's not even the screen I wanted. It's not even the screen I wanted, so I don't know why I did that.
Oh,
That's
man.
technically for the cloud provider.
That's why I still use VR.
You don't have to be
Yep.
hosting.
All the way.
They want you to provide
Same old shit.
The problem is you can read that much easier on the screen.
Everyone on the way has
Maybe old school.
No,
Just works.
Alright, let me see if that comes that screen across.
I know it's pain.
I'm just going to try and show you the other screen. Okay.
Exercising, apologising.
Come on. Okay, so this is the ARM box itself. Now, again, I would suggest you did it all through config management. But on the system, and I'll show you in a second, you could actually use Ansible to set up a cron job to run using exactly the same settings and gather the data back. So the little thing I didn't show you, which you obviously did see a little bit when I clicked on the screen, is that you can pull out information and have a timeline to see how compliant you've been over time. It's one of the things we're very aware of. I do speak to quite a lot of people on different areas. So you can see what was compliant and what wasn't compliant over time. But again, if you wanted to do it yourself, there's nothing stopping you from using Ansible to set up a cron job and then run cron, log in every few hours and bring it back to a local centralised repository location so you can just go through your scripts. Does that answer your question?
yeah, it does.
I'll show you how to do it on here really quickly, just as I can. Again, if I can find my mouse. There it is. And I'm just going to be really cheeky. I can't even read that. What time? Ah, great. That wrong again? Yeah, I'm
You
a good
need to
day.
do vagrant, and
There should just. Oh yes, I have. I just locked the box down. Well done. Well remembered. Well remembered.
Hold on.
Oh,
Still have to log in.
You still have to log in.
I'm really. Okay. Either way, you go to opt. I'm not going to do that. You can just go into opt, and there's the run Ansible, a run audit script. So under opt, and then the name of the audit for your OS. You'll find it in there. And the vars directory is a template that Ansible's copied across for you to use. So you can use the same variables again every time. Again, I would suggest you probably did an 85 check or something to make sure no one's going around and tweaking it so Mr. Auditor comes along and says everything is good all the time. But that's where I go. Ask the question?
Yeah.
Excellent.
What's the blocker for moving into a collection?
So we have about 100 repos. Sorry?
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the question is, what's the blocker from us moving into collection? So it's something we want to do, but we have, so Debian is Debian 10, 11, and 12. Red Hat is 6, 7, 8, 9. Then you've got CIS, then you've got STiG. Now, how do we group those collections? Do we carry on keeping them as a role as they are, but just call them a collection?
Yeah.
Do we group them to CIS? Do we group them to STiG? Do we group them to Red Hat? Do we group them to Ubuntu? It's a bigger question on how, because then we have to maintain it.
But what means all those repos? What do the repos do?
So all the repos are normally different operating systems. So we do different operating systems. So Red Hat from 6 to 9, Debian 10 to
That's
12.
part of one role,
They're all separate roles.
all separate.
Yeah, so I can create a collection which is a role and have it as Red Hat 9 CIS. But then people might want to have Red Hat STiG, so they have all the STiGs in the collection. So it just depends which one people want the most, and that's one of the questions we got this year on our timeline of how people want us to go further forward with it. Because the second we make that decision, that's a big change for us to be making from 100 repositories to managing, to pull that into a different way.
You're just asking now, every role has an own repo.
Every role has its own repo, yeah.
So it has basically a name.
Correct.
If you just put that in a roles folder,
Correct.
all with those names, and use keep repo filter, so keep the history of all those.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
And maybe write a bash loop around that.
Maybe we'll talk afterwards and see where we get the answer.
You don't want to use Ansible for it?
No, so I'm all up for using collections. I really want to move to collections. We've been saying it for the last couple of years. And there's another reason we want to use the Ansible sign product as well to make sure that people are seeing signed collections. So there's more benefits using some more of the tooling that John's been talking about today, Gundley, to make sure we get that coming through. So Ansible sign's one of those things that, I don't know if you know, can actually sign your collection, and it's almost certified against what you put in to say, when we received it, it's in the correct state. So when you download it, it's in the correct state. So that's one of the things we want to move to. So there's a few other nuances we're trying to put in, and maybe put it into the Red Hat ecosystem as well, so we can put collections inside the AFE platform. So there's a few other internal discussions we've got to have around how we do it, but it is definitely very much on our radar to put into collections. Does that help?
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry I couldn't be clearer, but there's a lot of little nuances for us to try and move around and navigate. Any more questions? No? I don't think so. Good. Good. So I think we've just about come to the end of the show. Is there anything else you'll go through or explain or... No? Go ahead.
There are different versions of the benchmark for every operating system. How do we manage the migration from like Red Hat 9 version 1.0 to Red Hat 9 version 2.0? Is there a way within your benchmark to say, okay, on version 1 this was this, on version 2 this?
No. I'll be really honest with you. CIS made a massive change between CIS and RHEL 9 from version 1 to version 2. They went from 6 sections to 7 sections. They moved all the numbering around. They started putting NIST controls in it as well. So we started to add NIST controls as tags. So everything's tagged. If you want to use CCI identifiers or NIST, they're all available to you. But we are pretty working with it day in, day out. You tend to say there's no one's going to migrate. You can't migrate. Your host file not going to work. Your variables aren't going to work. You need to go back and reapproach it. There's some things that are completely out of our control, unfortunately. But you're not the only one saying that. If you look at a lot of forums around people communicating, another one you'll see is who uses true and false, bin true, bin false. Anyone use that in your 10 of modules and bits and pieces? You ask to make sure the module doesn't load. So one of the options is that you can put in a mod profile that says bin true or bin false.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, anyone tell me what happens if you put bin false in and you boot your system? No? So if you choose to put bin false in, your system will come up saying there was an error at boot
Yeah.
time.
Good enough module.
Now, the standard documentation says to put in bin false. Now, we tend to put in bin true, because if I get a box coming up, I want to make sure that box is booted with no errors. And that discussion's been going on for 8 years so far. I don't know where it's going on. I don't have the link handy, but there's a lot of discussions going on around how automations and compliance is and things are being done, and it's a lot of feedback from the community. Any more questions? Fantastic, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.